Well, hello, I'm 𝗣𝗶𝗱 𝗔𝗺𝗍𝗶. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to cover a wide range of attachments from worst to best. I've wasted some money on attachments, and if you check out this video, I think you're going to find a lot of good information and hopefully save yourself from buying some attachments that are basically useless or not very helpful. So I've owned two different mini excavators over the last 3 years, a 1 ton and a 1.3 ton, and these attachments are going to fit from anything from the 0.8 to the 1.8. Mainly, most of us out there have 1 ton minis, but this is all going to be helpful information. I'm going to cover quick hitches as well, which ones I recommend, don't recommend. We're going to cover pin size and attachment sizing, so you make sure you buy the right attachment. It's going to fit your machine. And hopefully at the end of the video, you'll realize what you could use, and you'll save yourself some money in the long run. So enjoy the video. So first off, quickly, we're going to cover pins versus bolts, size and info on pins, and quick couplers. So buckets run bolts or pins. What do you prefer? Well, I don't really mind. I bought either or, bolts buckets and pin buckets. I'll give you a little pros and cons of each. I do not recommend buying machines that run all the pivot points with bolts because they're not heat treated and hardened. All the pins on pin buckets and pin and bushing machines like Rippas I've been running, they're all heat treated pins, and I've tried to drill through one before and it just drilled the drill bit. You could not drill through them. So this is a simple pin style bucket, and these little bolts are retainers that hold the pins in place. I prefer these. But, you know, I've also bought buckets that run bolts. It doesn't really matter. The next bucket I'm going to show here is my rock bucket. And I've ran bolts on these things. It's fine. It's a little slower if you're taking them on and off, switching them without a quick coupler. You got to tighten down the nylock nuts. It's not a big thing, but it's a little slower to switch out. Quick couplers. Here's a basic manual quick coupler. I don't recommend this style because that all thread in the center there will strip out that bolt and they wear out. This is the style I prefer. It's more of a mechanical hitch that you can toggle this little lever and release your bucket. Here's some dimensions here. Most pins are about 25 millimeter for pins or bolts. They're 92 to 90 millimeters wide with center offset of 90 millimeters. If you stick in that range, you're going to be good. I don't really recommend these. I don't have them. It's not a big thing, but they're a hydraulic disconnect, and I think they're going to be an issue breaking those lines off possibly in the soil. Just doesn't seem that necessary on a small machine. So there's my quick hitch right there. I'm lining up a bucket. It's already been released for the previous attachment, and you just kind of roll into it, roll down, and it snaps into place, and you're good to go. So these quick hitches you can add to basically any machine. Right here I'm removing my pins on my bucket, and I'm going to add my quick hitch. Keep in mind though, if you add a quick hitch, it reduces your curl power that you have for your bucket. So if you're doing something like really heavy duty trenching and ripping through rock and stuff like that and roots, you may want to pull off your quick hitch because you're not going to have as much curl power. And you can't lift your bucket as high to dump into trailers with the quick hitch because it brings it down another 8-10 inches. But another thing to mention, if you have a quick hitch and you do not have enough bolts or pins for it, you got to swap them out between your attachments. It's really not that quick. So you got to get online and order pins or bolts depending on what you need for your buckets. And if you're buying them online, they're going to cost you about $18 to $25 a set of bolts or pins. So honestly, even if you see a really good deal on a bucket, sometimes you're better off paying a little bit more to get it with the pins or bolts rather than buying them later, because they're usually a little cheaper when you are actually included with the bucket. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, on to the most useless attachment I've ever bought. So this is probably the worst attachment I've ever bought. As you see, it's a little rusty, but it's never been used. Now you're wondering why. Because it's complex to hook up. I did not know this going into it. So this attachment only would be worthwhile if you have a hydraulic mount for a hydraulic thumb, but do not actually have a hydraulic thumb installed in your machine. This would be useful, but most of these minis, so you see my videos, always recommend buying one with a hydraulic thumb, not a manual. As you see, there's 3 pins here. What the deal is with this one, why I've never used it, is these are your bucket pins. You'd pull out your bucket pins, install it here. Well, if you have a hydraulic thumb, this goes where your hydraulic thumb pivots. Means you got to pull your hydraulic thumb off. You got to take off your hydraulic cylinder, cap it, or anything like that to use this. And honestly, this attachment is useless to me because I got a hydraulic thumb. It would be in this location, and I can put my rake on, and it's almost the exact same thing. And a rake is far cheaper than this. Paired up with your hydraulic thumb. Don't buy a mini without a hydraulic thumb. It's just not worth plumbing one in later. get one with it. But this is by far the most useless attachment I've ever bought. I wouldn't recommend it. Also, the build quality looks to me like you're gonna bend the hell out of it moving logs. It's just not worth it. You can do a lot more with a bucket and a thumb or a rake and thumb. So don't waste your money on this attachment. Now onto the rock bucket. Now you can see it's moved up a little bit. It's still not that useful of attachment, but in the right application, it might be good for sorting out soils in your garden bed or something, as long as you don't have more than like 3 or 4 yards you want to really do, because it takes a little while to sort out soil with this thing. It's got to be really dry, because if it's wet at all, it's just going to clump. It's not going to fall through the grading. Plus the grading's set up in a way where the bucket's pretty weak. It's just basically a bucket with some slits cut out in the back. The real rock buckets, the slats are vertical, not horizontal, so that's not that sturdy of a bucket, but does move a bit of material. You can sort stuff out, and it does a pretty good job of getting the rocks out of it. It has to be bone dry, and it can't be a bunch of debris in it. If you have a bunch of grass and weeds, it just clogs up the grading. So that's my take on it. I do have a video I'll link down below if you want to see a full video on this rock bucket. It does work all right, but for the right application. So onto the hydraulic tilting bucket. You can see the chart. It's moved between worth considering and not so useful. That's my take on it. It's actually a pretty wide, robust bucket. It's 32 inches wide. See, I'm pinning it on here. I got rid of my quick coupler because this bucket is so long from the pins right here down to the cutting blade that with the quick coupler it'd be ridiculously long, and it's a heavy bucket. You would have very little to no curl power with this bucket. Like I said, this bucket is the most robustly built bucket I bought from any of my machines here. I actually bought this back when I had my yellow Rippa R319, but once I got it delivered and unloaded it, it was so heavy I thought, man, this thing's going to cause this little machine to be tipping all over the place, especially when you get a 32-inch wide bucket full of wet material. So right here I'm hooking up the hydraulic lines, running them up to those 3-way valves up there, which you just shut off your hydraulic thumb there with those valves and route that flow down to the bucket. The bucket actually has a lot of flow to it, and it's a little sensitive when it comes to using your thumb control, foot control on the machine to tilt. You have to kind of barely touch the pedal or it'll tilt extra fast. So that's one thing to consider, but it's a really heavy bucket, like I said, and this machine handles it pretty well, the Rippa R13, but it's got a longer track and it's got a counterweight on it. But again, if you had a full bucket and you try to reach out off to the side of your machine, you may be pretty tippy with it. I'm just working with it mainly out in front of me. And yeah, this machine has no problem digging into the softer soil alongside my driveway and cutting this water drainage ditch. And the bucket cut really actually pretty well. Like I said, though, it's got a really long pivot area from the pins down to the cutting blade, and I just don't use this bucket that often because it takes a while to set up on my machine. I found that just a nice wide material bucket, you can usually do most of your ditching that you want to do. But for the right application, somebody might find that they have a lot of ditching to do, and this might be the right application for them. This is one of the more expensive attachments we're going to cover here. I think it's up there with the price of an auger in that range. Right here I'm kind of setting up to recut this water bar that I cut every year, and I cut it pretty deep with this. And the neat thing is you can, the machine's sitting on one angle, you can manipulate the bucket to sit at a different angle, and then I can cut over to one side of the ditch, go to the other side, cut that angle, and so forth. And you can move a lot of material quickly with it. But I don't use it often. It's heavy. It's awkward to put on the machine. I just don't have that much ditching to do. So that's my take on this. You may find another application, or you might have a bunch of ditching, but this might be perfect. So on to the Ripper tooth now. As you see, this moved its way up to worth considering. This attachment is going to be one of the most affordable attachments you're going to be able to find. It's super lightweight for the machine. The machine handles it well, and it forces a ton of power down to one tiny point on a machine. And when I first got it, I tried to dig out some tree roots, and it cut through tree roots pretty well. I think a trenching bucket or possibly just your stock bucket is almost better for digging out small stumps. But where I found this thing to be super useful is breaking away really hard rocky soil. There's an embankment here, and in the summertime this embankment's like super hard, dried out clay and shale, and my buckets are just kind of scraping down it. And this machine with this ripper tooth paired up on it, it handled it really well. You notice that I have my blade behind me for that. That really helps to give a little more force downward. But here we're going to go over a little example of how I compare it between some buckets and a ripper tooth, and I found the ripper tooth did phenomenally better. So got a little test. I got some really hard shale ground over here. We're going to do a little comparison between the stock bucket, a trenching bucket, and a ripper tooth. Gonna see which one works the best here, because I haven't been that impressed with the ripper tooth. Probably in really rocky soil would be good. Ripping around roots, it's like trying to dig a tree out with a chopstick. It's just awkward. So I think the regular bucket and the trenching bucket is better for me for trying to dig out roots around a stump. But we're gonna test this hard shale and see how it does with all three of these implements. Share the results here. So I tried to do this basic test with the machine with the same RPM, same position, blade behind me, things like that. This is the stock tooth bucket, and it's breaking some of that shale up in the hillside. This is an extra rocky patch right here. I'm trying to bust into it, and notice the curl back on this bucket. This is a stock bucket with the quick disconnect. Now, a quick disconnect changes the curl angle of these buckets a bit. But this is the stock bucket, and it's breaking away somewhat. You can keep chipping away at it, and you can see it kind of skips down it, but it breaks some stuff free. And it did okay. But next we're going to jump over to the trenching bucket, little skinnier double tooth rather than triple tooth. And again, keep in mind, like, this thing doesn't have as much curl back. It's an aftermarket bucket I found on eBay, and it doesn't quite curl up enough, so it doesn't really give those teeth as good of an angle for breaking that stuff away. Right there is some softer soil on the side of this rock, a little outcropping, but back onto the hard rock, trying to skips down. As you see, I can't curl back the bucket anymore. Easy thing, you just scoot the machine back, but I didn't want to change the test since I have the machine sitting there for the original bucket. But this one did pretty good because you get a little more force on those 2 teeth rather than 3. But again, I'd have to have the machine sitting back a little further because I just couldn't curl much more. You'd get more curl out if I pulled off the quick disconnect, but I didn't want to take off the quick coupler. So it worked all right, I think, with the machine sitting back, so you can kind of curl up against the embankment better. But now we're going to jump over to the ripper, see how it does. I do like that quick coupler. It's pretty fast. This one actually had, even aftermarket, had a lot of curl back on it, and you could dig into the embankment pretty good at the angle. And yeah, this thing, you just get all the force of that machine right down into that one, tooth. So it forces way more power down into that rock, and it definitely breaks it away from the hillside far better. So if you have really rocky soil with a bunch of like granites mixed in with it, this is probably a recommended tool to get. They're pretty cheap, anywhere from 120 to 150 bucks, and you can do a lot of work with it. At that price, it's hard to really find the material and make it worthwhile to build it. Just make sure to try to buy them with the pins or bolts with them. Save yourself in the long run. So hands down, the ripper tooth works far better. More pressure, more curl back too. Honestly, I should scoot this whole machine back a little further. The stock bucket, these tabs are welded at different angles, because the stock bucket, you got a bit more of a rollback for scraping the embankment. When I put this aftermarket trencher bucket I got on eBay on here, it doesn't roll back as far, so I'd have to scoot the whole machine back. I just want to leave the machine in the same position for this whole test. And the ripper does extend back a little further, kind of like the stock bucket for ripping off the hillside. But anyhow, I'm going to finish this up. I got to break this whole area back a lot further, haul this out, I'm going to use this on gravel for a little side road, and I got to cut this embankment back far further here so I can build a little outbuilding, kind of a lean-to, a little shed to store that and my mini skid steer. Now we're moving up. It's worth considering. This is an 800 millimeter or 31 inch wide bucket. Keep in mind, this bucket looks way wider than the tilting bucket, but it's the same width, but it's about half the weight. So I think a 1 ton could handle this as long as you're working out in front of your blade. not off to the side with a fully loaded bucket. My 1.3 ton handles it just fine. It does seem kind of funny. This is a tooth bucket because it's so big. You're not going to be really digging into like hard soil with it. So you're just not going to have the pounds per square inch on the teeth like that. But it's got teeth on it. I probably will take them off at some point because I think a smoothing bucket for grading, ditching, and all that, this is going to be a pretty good bucket for me. I'll keep the teeth around and put them on a different bucket if I want. But this thing was pretty good right here. I'm cutting back this embankment, and really I'm just taking the big bucket and taking the top off the embankment to round it off a little bit because eventually it's going to slough down anyhow. So I'm just using it to grab a bunch of material and cut it off. And even as hard as that material is, the teeth are doing something there, but don't think that you're going to be digging a 31-inch wide hole with this thing. It's going to be more for moving materials. Again, that's why I'll probably pull the teeth off it at some point so you don't scrape the teeth along the ground. It's going to be better for grading. But if you want to move a lot of material really quick, this is the way to go, especially if you don't have a skid steer. If you're planning to get one, this might be a good way to go to get one of these in the time being when you're saving up for a skid steer. This is actually a Rippa brand bucket. Seems to be pretty decent build quality. Like I mentioned, if you're saving up for a skid steer, this might be a good thing to run some cash into if you just have a mini at the time being, just to kind of move a lot of material with the one machine you have while you're saving up. Another thing, if you're going to go to a job or project and you had to move a bunch of soil or gravel, this is well worth throwing in the trailer with your mini just so you can do a bunch of grading, especially like right here. I'm cleaning up a bunch of mud before I build a pole structure. It's just mucky, soft soil. So I was moving out of the way, but without the teeth, you get a really clean cut finish. With the teeth, you're kind of dragging them across the ground like that, leaving grooves. But I think this is a bucket worth considering. There's a lot of these things available. Link below to a few on Amazon, but there's also going to be a link to Rippa. I've never bought parts directly from them, like buckets and stuff, but might be a good consideration what kind of quote they can give you on maybe a pallet of attachments. Something to look into. Now onto the hydraulic auger. I'm pretty new to this attachment, but overall I really think it's worthwhile to have, especially if you have jobs for like this. You can get them in 6, 8, 12 inch. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail of how rough the soil is, and I'll come back with some voiceover. Now I have never ran one of these augers before, but I got a project to help a friend where I'm going to be running a bunch of holes with it. But I think regular soil is going to be fine, but I really have a hard time believing it's going to go through this stuff. So this is going to be hopefully not a torture test. But as you guys saw, I had to use the ripper tine to cut through a lot of this, and that's what's going all the way down on the ground. We're already like 4 feet below grade, and it's really hard clay and shale. This is going to be probably the easiest hole to dig because this is closest to grade. Back over there on the back side of the wall are going to be gnarly. Check this out. So that's a spike and a 1 pound mini sledgehammer. Get an idea how rough that soil is. Even trying to get this spike out, I've had to pound it back and forth numerous times just to get it freed up from the rocky soil this is in. So it's going to be a challenge. I'm new to this attachment, but the hydraulic auger, I was pretty impressed, especially for being such a larger diameter. I didn't think it was going to have much power, but this thing had plenty of power. You run it off your foot controls for your thumb. Cool thing about this is you can reverse it unlike a PTO tractor auger. If you get hooked around a root or rock, you can reverse it. Pretty good, plus the pressure relief kicks in. On this job, I hit massive amounts of really big rock that would bind it up, and it would just pressure relief, and it weren't breaking anything. Like, I thought if I was going to destroy it, it was going to be on this job, the first job, because I have a bunch of stuff to do in a field for a friend, and it should be easy digging. But this stuff up here was gnarly, and I found some techniques. Like, this hole dug pretty well, but after letting the holes, I kind of would go down as far as I could get in each one. Finally, eventually, I would hit like some really bad rock. And eventually, what I ended up doing was just putting a gallon of water in each hole, let it sit for 10 minutes, and re-auger it out. It actually helped because the ground was so powdery and dusty, it turned into a little bit of a mud. Instead of just the powder falling back in, you could get the mud out of the hole easier, and it softened it up to get the big rocks out. So you see I was working in this until the late evening, digging these holes, just trying to erase the rain that was coming the next day. And yeah, it was pretty powdery here, but the next day it turned to absolute mud. All in all, these aren't the best shots, but getting some stuff done, working in the evening, and I'm pretty impressed with what you can do with that auger there. So we're not done with the attachment content yet. We actually got all the really useful ones coming up next. But I want to mention, if you've been watching my video over the years and find the mini excavator and skid steer content helpful, there's 3 different things you can do to help this channel. One is you can buy me a $5 coffee. That goes a long ways in making more content, because I got probably over $1,000 worth of attachments, over 8 hours of making this video, and countless hours in videoing all this stuff. So that would help out. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine. What you can also do is just give it a thumbs up, leave a positive comment down below, maybe share the video. That helps. Another thing, in the first week of the video coming out, if you swipe over in the comment section and hit the hype button, supposedly that's another loophole YouTube wants you to jump through. That could maybe help out with the video. So, all right, back to the content. So as you can see, we're moving from worth considering to most useful. These little 8-inch trenching buckets, or 200 millimeters if you're looking them up online, are super value buckets. Like, you can get them for pretty good price, anywhere from like maybe 110 to 150 bucks, depending if they come with pins or not. And man, they're really good. They're not only just good for trenching, like if you're going to start removing some material for doing trenching, for running power and water lines, you might as well only cut an 8-inch trench and not a 12-inch trench. But you get a little more power with the machine. This stuff was really rocky soil, and I probably would have been better off getting rid of my quick coupler, because you get more curl force, but I was managing pretty well. But it is about as much as I want to break free deep down with this heavy duty shale, without maybe pulling off that quick coupler. But yeah, this thing works really good if you're going to cut a little water line trench. You're good to go with them. But also, being that two system like that, as you saw earlier in the video, you can use it for breaking away small rock and stuff on hillsides as well. It's just a good little bucket. I think this would be great to pair up if you're trying to break some roots free around a tree. Better than that Ripper, because you can actually remove a little bit of soil, but you got a lot of curl power, especially if you get rid of that quick coupler when you're using it. So we're moving right up to the most useful area on this chart. This is the 400 millimeter or 19-inch smooth material bucket. Didn't come with teeth. It came with bolts. A pretty affordable bucket. This is around the, I think I spent around the $150, $160 range for it. And hands down, this is probably your second attachment you should buy if you get a mini. It's nice, lightweight. The machine has no problem handling it full of wet soil. With that softer soil, it cuts really well. You can actually do quite a bit of ditching with this bucket and smoothing if you need to. It moves like basically twice as much material than the stock bucket. And it's a really nice lightweight bucket, easy to take when you take on projects and jobs. You can grab it with one hand and carry it by the pins. Here I'm doing a little bit of gravel work on my driveway, fixing up a water bar last fall when we're anticipating some, we always have really wet winters out here in the Northwest. So working on this water bar here and using the backside of it without the teeth. It's really nice for smoothing stuff as well. It just works pretty good for doing this kind of driveway work. Another cool thing is, I've never really done this with too many buckets, but this one I flipped around and ran it backwards. You'd be a lot better off getting rid of the quick coupler on there, because you couldn't roll too far in one of the directions with that. It kind of limits your movement on it, but it was kind of nice to be able to flip that bucket around and push material away. It was a kind of a cool little experiment, and it worked pretty good for removing some material away from my driveway and just working on some ditching along the side. But yeah, that's definitely well worth the cost in this, especially it's so light. Your machine, even if you have like something like the R319 that I had in the past, which doesn't have any counterweight to it, this bucket's not going to bog it down. So one of the last things I want to know, I originally bought this bucket not intending to use it for this, but I'm keeping it as this purpose. I actually bought this 19-inch bucket because I could not find anybody that sold a toothed 16-inch bucket, because this little R13 has enough power in the right softer soil conditions. A toothed bucket at 16 inches, it would dig just great. But I got this 19-inch bucket, going to cut it down. I was going to put on teeth on it, but I found it just worked so good, I never bothered with it. But I can't find any affordable 16-inch buckets out there. So Rippa, machpro, any of the other bucket companies, please make a 16-inch tooth affordable bucket. I ordered one of these about last summer with an auger and a few other things, and the order got so messed up I finally just canceled it. So if you see the graph on the side, we're moving in the most useful range. These rakes are well worth the money. Like I mentioned earlier, I did order one of these rakes with an auger from a supplier I've ordered from before, but the order just got so messed up that I just canceled it because it was never shipped out. So it took me about a year before I reordered something like this again, and that time I went through eBay. I was going to go between Rippa and machpro. They both seem to have the best build quality, but the machpro just had a better shipping on it, so I ended up going the machpro. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a moment, but anyhow, these rakes work really, really well. I have a modification I'll mention that I did to actually help kind of make the tines so you don't bend them as easy, but these rakes are hands down super useful. I definitely recommend if you have a mini with a hydraulic thumb, these things come into handy from whether you're working your garden, rooting out like roots, working on weeding, moving soft soil around. I mean, I dig out plants with it all the time. This is so useful to rip out roots, plants, move them around. You can do a little bit of dirt grading with it even. It works really well for that. And really mucky soil, it doesn't get stuck in your bucket, and you can actually move mucky soil around pretty well with the rake. So between that, brushing, moving trash around, I mean, these things are just so useful. I can't say enough about how useful this attachment is. You're just going to have to get one for yourself. Make sure to get one with pins or bolts. And like I said, there's a big difference in quality, of build quality when it comes to thickness of metal. So really focus on getting a machpro or a Rippa one just because they seem to be a cut above in the build quality. Here's my rake. This was a machpro rake because I found that the Rippa machpro stuff seems to be a cut above. It has bigger gussets built out of bigger, thicker stuff. This is, I think, a 19-inch. I don't recommend much wider just because you got a lot of power with this. You can do some grading and some stuff like that. But problem with these things, even though they are bigger tines, you can bend them out and flare them out. So I went through and cut a bunch of these on my CNC. They're just gussets. I got to cut a set from my friend too that has a rake. Definitely recommend doing this because these will get bent. We put on really large crescent wrenches, like, 2.5, 3 footers, and bent them back into place. But after that, I just wanted to weld these on because it adds a lot of strength to the rakes here. So that's something I want to mention. Now, not to try to let you down, but the most useful bucket that comes with this machine is the stock 300mm 12-inch bucket paired up with the hydraulic thumb. Don't click off yet if you're disappointed to hear this, so I still got a few free to cheap attachments recommendations at the very end of the video that I think you're going to want to see. But again, back to this bucket. It's great for lifting, moving rock, picking up logs, whatever you want to do with this thing. It's really sturdy, robust. It's got a pretty good breakaway power for the machine. It's paired up pretty well, but yeah, you can move rocks with it really well. I did do some modifications because I was dealing with my buckets flaring on both my machines. I'll show that at the end of this little section of how I modified my bucket, and I had zero problems with them flaring after that. But if you're picking up materials, oddball stuff like this metal brush rake for a bulldozer, just steel, whatever you're doing, beams, it just does it really well. Here I'm digging out some small breakaways, some small roots on a Douglas fir stump, and that paired up with that thumb is a great way to go. So the stock bucket on these things are robust, breakaway in hard soil, lifting out roots, cutting roots, lifting most generalized things. The stock bucket is by far used on this machine, I would say 90% of the time. I also want to mention I welded on a hook on the back of this bucket, which I use all the time for lifting stuff with straps and things like that. I think the manufacturers should start putting a hook on the back as a 2-ton hook so it completely exceeds the capability of this machine. But yeah, I use that all the time. I also use it for moving logs like this onto my sawmill. Stock bucket, it's a no-brainer, dude. It works so good. So definitely don't rule out that as a great attachment. It comes with the machine, but 90% of the time you're going to be using this bucket. So now we're down to cheap to free attachments. If you have a hydraulic thumb, this is crucial. So here I was cleaning up some concrete. I had old tree debris fell on it, had moss all over it. I grabbed this chunk of wood from my mill. I did break it in half there, so I grabbed a smaller one. I think it was 4 inches thick, and it worked great for scraping concrete, reclaiming areas like this, and it's quieter than dragging a bunch of steel across the concrete. It's easier on the machine. The wood will wear down eventually, but if you break it in half or wear it out, just throw it away, burn it, whatever, and grab yourself another chunk of little beam. And this is a really simple thing to clean up concrete like this. Simple mod. Another thing you can get for free to cheap is a chunk of I-beam. I've used this. I got this chunk of I-beam for free from a friend. It's great to clamp in a machine. You can also manipulate it by putting it down on angled ground to kind of work as like almost an angle scraper. So if you want to change a grade of something, you can clamp into your bucket and thumb at an angle and scrape the material around like that. It also works really good for grading around for gravel, moving a large bit of gravel. I think this beam's about 3.5 feet, 4 feet wide. It's about all I think I'd really need, and it works really well. Well, if you made it this long, I really appreciate it. Hopefully that video can save you some money and keep you from getting a bunk attachment, or maybe you'll find one of those attachments that I didn't find very useful. Maybe it was right for you. So I'll also put a playlist down below for this blue R13 so you can see some videos of what I've been able to get done with the machine, and a playlist for my older R319, the little yellow machine. All right, bye.